Hey guys, so I'm going to be making a video on the 8 values political test. It's a political test that basically measures your thing based off of 8 values. Um, basically, um, um, essentially, it's kind of like that 16 personalities where it lines up the 4 and sees where you fall on four uh, four axes, basically. Um, so yeah, let's give it a start. Got it. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Um, Depends on the scenario because I think both are equally bad, but depending on the systems, depending on the corporate type of corporation, depending on the industry of the corporation, and depending on the type of government you're specifically talking about, oppression by corporation can be more of a concern, though in other scenarios, government by oppression could be more of a concern. So I'm going to go with neutral because I think it could happen both ways. Um, it is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. I would strongly agree with that because I think, yeah, to protect consumers because, sometimes it's not a free market. It's not a completely free market, meaning there's not a whole lot of competition, and all the companies have pretty much the same policy, and so it's impossible to change a policy by favoring a company that has a different policy because all of them agree on this one policy, in which case the government must intervene. It's not a choice. It's you have to. And so the freer the markets, the freer the people. I would agree. The more free the markets, the more free the people. Meaning, in some instances, government is going to have to get involved to create the free market. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. No, I think a balanced budget should be prioritized, but not above the welfare of the citizens. That is the first and primary function of government, in my opinion. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. Currently, I would say yes, though again, depending on the system. I do think generally publicly funded research can be more beneficial, as in general we are running out of antibiotics. That's one example. Um, and corporations, drug companies, are not so eager to do that research because they're not going to be able to directly profit off of it in the near future. That is down the road. Even though it is a very necessary part of our medical field, and as soon as we are out of antibiotics, I don't mean we have zero antibiotics. I mean we have zero viable antibiotics because the bacteria is completely resistant to them. All the antibiotics we have are all completely useless now. We need to be having more antibiotics because the second we don't, one of the fundamental bases of modern medicine will be completely gone. Because pretty much everything we do with surgeries, with common cold, how do we treat them? What do we often use to treat them? Antibiotics, that is how we fight infections. That is how we fight the very commonplace occurrences that have happened in old school medicine. Without antibiotics, effective antibiotics, things are going to get real dark real quickly. International trade is beneficial. Yes, it can be beneficial. In some instances, it can be not beneficial, but generally, I would say, for the economy in general, it's beneficial. But how it affects the average Joe, maybe not so much. So it's a balance that you need to strike there. From each according to his ability. From the wealthy to the poor is basically this statement. To basically equalize everything. I mean, I'm gonna disagree slightly, not strongly, but to a certain extent. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Hell the fuck no. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. In a general sense, yes, but within reason. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth, absolutely. Public utilities like roads should be publicly owned, yes. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy. Absolutely. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better healthcare. No. They should be able to receive maybe different forms of healthcare, like a tit job or a dick job, but no better quality care. Care should be, or better healthcare meaning maybe you want to go extra mile instead of the basic level, but when it comes to the basic level of care, like making sure your needs are met, your basic needs are met, the care should be amazing, phenomenal. You go above and beyond, well, maybe I want to do this extra procedure to make things less of a burden or so. Then, yeah, maybe. So, I mean, it depends on specifically how you define it, but I'm generally going to disagree because I think, in general, care should be, the quality of it should be excellent. The quality of education is a right to all people? Hell yes. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. Kinda. I don't think they should belong. I think they can belong. They can belong, but it's not necessarily that they should belong. Alright? I don't think they should. I don't think you're entitled to own the means of production. I think you can own them and fruit from the labor of your work. But you're not entitled to them. The United Nations should be abolished. The fuck no. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. The military action used by my nation. No, I'm going to disagree. Not strongly, but because I think there is a kernel of protecting our nation in there. But a large portion of it isn't. I support regional unions such as the European Union. I mean, regional unions, it depends on what the core function of the Union is. Like the Human Rights Directive of the EU. I don't support the current EU. I support a potential EU with an amended Article 9 and a strengthened Article 10 to remove, basically, people should have basically what Article 9, I would remove the last sentence in Article 10, and I would remove the last clause in Article 9. Because basically, what the end of Article 9 says is that people have a right to not be offended, to not have their beliefs offended. That is utterly ridiculous. If you have a ridiculous belief, I am perfectly within my rights to say that belief is fucking stupid, okay? Whether it be your religion, your political ideology, your whatever. I'm perfectly within my rights to use my speech to say, to speak my beliefs and call your beliefs fucking stupid and idiotic. That is completely within my rights. You don't have any right to lock me up or jail me or fine me for me expressing my human rights. Okay? So, it depends. But in general, yes, I think the more dialogue we have with outside people, the better. And I fully support the American Union. I'm not in favor of Texas seceding from the Union again. It is important to maintain our national sovereignty. Yes, I think it is important for the state of Texas to retain its sovereignty also against the encroachment of the federal government on certain issues. Though I do think the federal government we need to make some serious federal changes instituted to standardize the forms of government, at least structural issues in the states, so that state governments cannot usurp the will of their people. Like in Wisconsin recently, they recently voted in a Democratic governor. The legislature, however, is still controlled by Republicans after the last election. So, during the lame duck session, the governor convened a special session of the legislature, and they basically reduced the power of the governor, so that when the opposition governor came in, he didn't have the same amount of powers. That is an inherent power grab by the legislature of Wisconsin, and it should be condemned. So yeah, standardizing state governments so that but we're also going to give the state governments a lot more power, a lot more sovereignty over themselves than they have had in the past. Now, I think these reforms to state governments are necessary in order to give them back some of the sovereignty they lost, because the reason they lost their sovereignty in the first place was because of them overstepping and abusing their authority. And so when the federal government was controlled by better people, to some degree, they corrected the abuses, marginally. I think government will never fully correct its abuses as government. I do believe, now there is this anarcho-capitalist theory that all government is the threat of force. I do agree to that. I do agree with that. Though, without some threat of force, I do think everything falls apart. So some threat of force is necessary. Some authority is necessary. You cannot get something without authority. It is a trade-off, but I think it is ultimately necessary that some governmental authority, which is the threat of force, is necessary. It is important to maintain so generally, yeah, I will strongly agree but I think we need to be able to give some power to regulate the structure and the elections. But keep it within the Constitution, so it cannot be altered. So, yeah, we have retained most of our power, but we do have some power given to another, but some power we maybe someday should happen. We have a central, if there's a globalized central government. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, so long as it has a great fundamental law. If the global government is based on the Constitution of the United States, with some structural changes in like the ones I previously mentioned, but keeping in the Bill of Rights, that would be a global government I'd be in favor of. So, I'm neutral in that sense. I think, and funny thing, I just started talking about it. I didn't realize that was the next question. Yeah. So I think it can be beneficial. It's not necessarily beneficial. It depends on the Constitution. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. Strongly agree. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. Hell the fuck no. Military spending is a waste of money. Given that how much money our country spends, I'm gonna be neutral because it's not really a waste of money. But the amount we spend, to that extent it kind of is. I think we need to spend less and be more efficient with that money instead of being very wasteful and ineffective, because I think libertarians and Republicans are right that government is wasteful and ineffective. But that also applies to the military. And we must be consistent. International aid is a waste of money. Not necessarily, it can be. It depends on the specific nation. Because so depending on how much of a nation, the attitude towards America there, depending on that, it's either a waste of money or it isn't. My nation is great. I think the foundational belief, principles, and documents of my nation are great. As it stands today, not so much. Research should be conducted on an international scale. Yes, I think that will really help resources and help us not duplicate or unnecessarily duplicate things. But we need to be duplicating studies so that we can be firm in knowing what the fuck we're doing. Okay. Okay, governments should be accountable to the international community. Yeah. I think they should, but it depends. There could be some instances where the international community is wrong and we're right. Even when protesting an authoritarian regime, an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. Now, it depends, I would say it depends on what you mean by authoritarian government. Do you mean, are they legitimately authoritarian? If they are legitimately authoritarian, like say Italy, like say Hitler or Mussolini, Stalin, people like that. I think leading a violent revolution against Stalin, Hitler, or Mussolini, completely in support of those, any types of governments that are legitimately authoritarian like those. However, what people might call pseudo-authoritarian governments, like maybe Trump currently, or under governments you just don't like that you might perceive as authoritarian because you can't stand their politics, but they haven't crossed the finish line to authoritarianism, at least not yet. Those governments, violence is not acceptable. So, in the general context, I'm going to disagree. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. Well, my religious values is fuck religious values. And I do think that should be spread. The idea that we should not be religious at all. The idea that we should be. So, I guess technically, but maybe I'm going to go with disagree because I think we should say fuck all to do with religion. Yeah, and plus I'm not necessarily advocating for my specific belief, but I think religious values in general should be not weighted. Our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. Yeah, I think the general values of the U.S. as a whole should be spread. It is very important to maintain law and order. To some extent, yes. Though the general populace makes poor decisions. Yes, but I think we all make poor decisions. Even the elite make poor decisions. So I don't think that's just respective of poor people. I think that's in general of the human race of the human race in general. So but the way to which the tone says, I mean, as a group, does the general populace make poor decisions? Not generally. They make ever more increasingly good decisions, I think. But it is true that if the general populace is doing a shitty thing, if the group, when you get into a group mentality, if your group is doing a shitty thing, you are more likely to do that same shitty thing. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly, I think, it can be better sometimes. Victimless crimes such as drug use should not be crimes at all. Absolutely, prostitution included, sex work. It should be complete decriminalization of sex work. And the way we should define pimping is a pimp is an abusive procurer, as someone who procures you clients and is physically abusive. And forces you to have sex. That is the way we should define pimps. That is how we should define pimps. Abusive and forceful. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. I think it might, I mean, I saw a video, I think, of Sargon of Akkad. He made an interesting point. It is technically necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. But I disagree that we should do it. So yeah, disagree. Even to some extent now, I'm going to disagree that we're not going to be protected from acts of terrorism. Because a lot of that, because I think we need basically to be more efficient with actually go through due process, use the Constitution, use the Bill of Rights. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. To some extent, kind of, but I don't think we should be doing it. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. Regardless, I think I might actually. Yeah, regardless of the political opinions, it is important to side with your country. Strongly disagree. No authority should ever be left unquestioned. Absolutely. Hierarchical state is best. It is, I think, yeah. It is important that the government follows the majority of opinion, even if it is wrong. Now, this is where I'm going to disagree with the general principle of democracy. I'm going to say disagree. The main reason why is because the majority of the people, imagine a scenario in which the majority of the people feel like the Jews should be murdered in cold blood. Or the Jews should be murdered, basically, yeah. It is important that the government follows that decision? No. We need to set up, the government should follow the rule of law. And if the majority, because what this basically question is saying is, do you support complete democracy or do you support republicanism? Complete democracy is that the majority has spoken. We will now kill these people that we do not like. Yay. No, that is completely wrong. We need to have checks on the tyranny of the majority. So the majority cannot, in a number of instances, we should completely disregard the majority opinion. Should the majority opinion wish to strip certain people of their human rights, we will discard that majority opinion. In that regard, I disagree with this statement. The rule of law says that, hey, you don't like Jews, you don't like black people. If the majority of the populace is they don't like Jews, they don't like black people, they don't like gay people, and they want to commit genocide against them, so fucking what? No. No. You're not going to do that. The stronger the leadership, the better. Not necessarily. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Yes, it is more. Environmental regulations are essential. I think, yeah, if you want to survive, then they are. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. I'm neutral. I have no clue what the future will hold, so how can I know if that society will be better? Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. Hell the fuck no. Traditions are of no value on their own. Fuck yeah. Religion should play a role in government. Hell the fuck no. Churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. Hell the fuck yes. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to a way of life. Yeah, I'm gonna agree. It is important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. Yeah, society was better many years ago than it is now. No. Society was more bigoted. I think we're getting better, but we still have places where women are treated as second-class citizens. So, like Saudi Arabia, pretty in general the Middle Eastern area and parts of Africa. It's important that we maintain the traditions of our past. I'm neutral. I think there are some traditions that we should uh, maintain, but traditions like slavery, fuck no. Bigotry, I think no. I mean, unless you know there are traditions, yeah, but traditions based on bigotry, I think, yeah, should be rejected. But I don't think we should. I don't think we should not be bigoted towards those traditions. So yeah, it is important that we think in the long term, beyond our lifespans. Yeah, strongly agree. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. Yes, drug use should be legalized. I'm gonna not strongly agree. I think to some extent we should. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. Fuck yeah. Same-sex marriage should be legal. Yeah. No cultures are superior to others. Not really. Sex outside of, I mean, I'll expand upon that. I mean, some cultures have bigoted beliefs, like the culture of the South, for a long time, has been fucking dog shit. And that's the place where I come from. I mean, it's been race. It has had a bit of a racist culture. Now, some of the different aspects of the culture have been great, like the food, etc. But others have been fucking dog shit. And so, cultures that don't have that sort of dog shit racism to it are superior. So yeah, and we need to fight for sort of a universal. We need to try and create a culture where, hell yeah, people are going to be racist, and people are going to have bigoted views, terrible fucking views, and they exist. They're going to exist. You can't really do nothing about them. Might as well just let them just stay up on their porch and just say, you know, when I was a boy, or something like that, you know. Sex outside of marriage is immoral. Fuck no. If we accept migrants at all, it is important that they assimilate into our culture. I'm gonna say yes, because I think generally, but I do think they shouldn't fully assimilate. Well, one, assimilating into American culture kind of, in a sense of the term, means that they don't fully assimilate, because part of the thing that makes America America is that we have a multicultural culture, which means whatever the fuck they bring to the table, embrace that. It'll at least embrace the stuff like the food and certain holiday traditions, certain fun traditions, and the unfun traditions in moderation, so long as they don't contradict anyone's human rights or other rights specified, or the rights granted to those not in that haven't lost their rights. Abortion should be prohibited. In almost cases, abortion should be prohibited. Fuck no. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. Fuck no. I support single-payer universal health care. Yeah, but I have some quibbles with the specifics of it. Prostitution should be illegal. Fuck no. Maintaining family values is essential. Fuck no. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. Fuck yes. Genetic modification is a force for good, even on humans. I have no fucking clue. We should open our borders to immigration. Fuck yes. Government should be as concerned about foreign citizens as they are about those within their borders. No. Disagree. I mean, come on. I mean, they should be concerned to some extent about people beyond our borders, but they should be concerned with us more, okay? I mean, they shouldn't don't treat foreigner citizens with disdain, but don't prioritize, but we should get priority, you know. All people, regardless of factors like culture or sexuality, should be treated equally. Hell yes. It is important that we further my group's goals above all others. Well, one, I disagree because I think, yeah, kind of disagree. Social libertarianism. Economic axis. Centrist. A centrist favoring equality, diplomatic axis, peaceful. Libertarian. Um, Civil axis, libertarian. Societal axis, very progressive. So yeah, I am a social libertarian. Social libertarianism. I'm pretty sure I knew I was going to get that result. That's kind of how I seem to roll. A Texan social libertarian. By the way, if you happen to be interested and you're in the United States, hopefully you're in Texas so we can get something rolling. But if not, we can partially get something rolling. Well, even if you are in Texas, I doubt it's going to be enough people that really get things rolling, but it helps because the U.S. it's geographic based, so the more concentrated people we've got to challenge the two parties, the better. All right. So, uh, yeah, check out Social Libertarians on Facebook. That's a party I've started. It's barely getting off the ground. It's got some posts. I've started on the platform. I've pretty much made my own platform. I can do that because I'm the only current member. But you know, should that change, platform will be up for debate. And yeah, up for debate. And then we can add things. I think my current platform doesn't is not too complete. Even I would make some adjustments. So I think main it's gonna be adding things. I don't think for most social libertarians we're gonna be subtracting things. So yeah,